2002, I joined Al-Qaeda in the early part of that year. Towards the end of the year, in December, I traveled to Afghanistan. What I saw in Afghanistan was war, obviously. This war started because of 9/11, the war on terror. 3,000 people were killed in 9/11. People from my faith, Islam, were blamed for that attack. They may have done it, they may not have. But we know that that passport was found and it had a Muslim name on it. Because the war on terror began the way it did, we found that the revenge for 3,000 people resulted in over 1 million people killed. Majority, 95% of those that were killed were innocent women and children. Put aside the fact that they were Muslim, they were human beings. They died because of the terrorists, 19 apparently, that actually didn't come from Afghanistan. It was shown to us that the majority came from Saudi Arabia. Yet we have George Bush holding hands with the Saudi king, smiling. But the Afghan people, they suffered tremendously as a result of the attacks of the Saudis. I saw people from my faith recruit, manipulate young kids, 9, 10-year-old kids. I witnessed that they were being tailored for suicide vests. When I asked the question, why are you doing this to young children? We know the Americans are killing the children. We know they're killing the people, the innocent ones. Why are you doing this? This is forbidden in my religion. It's not allowed. The answer I got was the Americans have fighter planes. They have missiles. God has given us these children. The children believe that they are going to paradise, that they will be rid of this suffering, and their families will be rid of that suffering too, just by one action. They didn't know that that action meant that they will explode themselves. And they didn't know that they have been manipulated, emotionally abused by these people who claim to be Muslims, representing my faith. My arguments continued with those people. Because of that, I managed to return to the UK. My background in the UK was a businessman. I was quite wealthy. I was born and raised in the UK. I couldn't speak my parents' language until I moved from the north of England to London, where there was more Asian people. I couldn't speak it properly. I still can't. I was born and raised as a British individual. All of my friends were white British people. All of my customers in my business were white British people. All of my staff were white people. So when I returned to the UK, my country of birth, the country where I belong, I wanted to make aware the communities of the problems that I've experienced myself, of the way my emotions, my faith, my beliefs were manipulated. So much so that I left everything behind, my wife, my children, my business, everything, and I traveled to Afghanistan. Not as a terrorist, as a humanitarian, but if that meant that I was going to get involved and defend those young children, then I would have fought as well. I returned to try to make aware my community about the dangers of extremism, of people from Islam manipulating young Muslims. I didn't care anymore what the Americans were doing. It was bad, intolerable, inhumane, but I couldn't change that. But what I set out to do was a mission to change the way people use my faith, Islam, as a vehicle to drive men and women to become terrorists. I set out on a mission to stop young men and women from becoming suicide bombers and terrorists. If I can give you an example of Let's say tomorrow you have people from my faith come to your country, and all of a sudden in the middle of Budapest you see a pile of dead children, dead Hungarians, with a Muslim standing over them, smiling. How would that make you feel? I'm clear, and I'm sure that you would feel quite angry, quite emotional. You become in a situation where you are vulnerable to the conversations of others to lead you astray. When I speak to young men and women who want to go to Syria, who want to fight, who want to become terrorists, you may ask, what do they say? You may also ask, why did I join Al-Qaeda? If it was today that I joined ISIS, I wanted to go to do humanitarian work, I would be called a terrorist. The questions that I ask to young people, and I find the answers, are similar to my own personal experience. They say 9/11 was a conspiracy. They say, how can you find a passport when you couldn't find metal, concrete? Everything was disintegrated. That's why the towers collapsed, because the metal disintegrated. But yet somebody found that passport. I don't know what it was made of, but it must have been strong. But then all of a sudden you have George Bush lead this war on terror, calling it a crusade. You had Western leaders use terms like evil ideology about my faith. And we all know that if we all follow our faith, we could not have war. Yet we somehow find that all the faiths are clashing amongst each other. But George Bush's war on terror, this crusade, is what drove me when I saw the thousands of innocent women and children dying, when I saw the lies, let's say, the conspiracy theories, which we can't talk about. Otherwise, you'd be deemed as crazy, extreme. Young men and women come to me and say, look at this. Look what's happening in Syria. Look at what happened in Iraq. The weapons of mass destruction did not materialize. Yet we had the world's leaders emotionally manipulate the rest of the world to get you to believe that your life is threatened by Saddam Hussein. He was involved in 9/11, and he has weapons of mass destruction which will change your life. Discussions started to happen. Ideas were coming out. 9/11, whoever it was, came from an idea and then a conversation. But the conversations that happen around young people are about conspiracies. Some realities. When we had over 1 million people killed in Iraq and are still today being killed because of George Bush wanted to stabilize the world. He wanted to bring peace to the globe by removing the weapons of mass destruction, which nobody found. Then what can I say, or what can you say to a young person who feels angry, feels emotional, feels frustrated about what's happening to people from his faith? It's difficult. But when I have these discussions, I find out that the journey of extremism begins with conversations. Those conversations shape the way we think. They come from an idea. What happened in Syria, the revolution, the rebellion, came from an idea. And if we allow the media, the world's leaders to shape the way we think, shape the way we believe, shape the way our attitudes are towards a fellow human being, forget for 1 minute about faith. Look at each other and people like me who are different than you, different color, different faith. Look at them as human beings. Because if we allow the media and allow information or misinformation to shape the way we think and we generate ideas, then those ideas will generate into conversations. They can be contagious. The contagious ideas and the conversations, you saw the results of that in Syria. Those were conversations that were contagious, led to a mass rebellion, which led to the war. We can have those conversations. We must have conversations. But let's have some positive conversations, because the conversations that we have will determine how we even think. And when you have young men and women going on a path of extremism, of destruction, you have to sometimes dictate the conversation. If you talk about war all the time, then that person will continue to have conversations around war. We need to look at peace as the ultimate goal, without the militaries. Because we know from history that the problem will only get worse if we allow the militaries and the Western world, or the powerful leaders, to shape the way we think and the way we behave. The Muslims are coming. That's what we've been told by some of the far-right extremists. The media tells us the Muslims are coming to take over the world. Look in Europe. Look in your own country. Look at your borders. The Muslims are coming. Are you going to believe what the extremists are saying? Where should they go if they're fleeing war? They want peace. But if you start to believe that these guys, these extremists, are saying the Muslims are coming to kill us and to take over our way of life, then we are going to miss a trick. Then we're only going to have conversations of fear. Our emotions will shape the way we think, and that will not be healthy. What does my religion, what does Islam say about terrorism? It condemns it in the strongest sense. Does Christianity compel the KKK to burn African Americans on the cross even now? It does not. Islam forbids terrorism. Islam forbids the killing of innocent people. Many of you will say, but in the book it says differently. It's how you understand. Muslims don't understand their own faith. We need guidance from the scholars. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, who brought us the faith, warned us 1400 years ago about people like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I didn't know that. Otherwise, my conversations would have been different. I didn't critically analyze the information that I was given. It's how we analyze that information, how we process that, and how we digest that, based upon our feelings sometimes. But Islam teaches us to kill one person is like the killing of your whole humanity. Islam says to Muslims, to you is your religion, and it says to Christians and other people from other faiths, to you is your religion. There is no compulsion within Islam. No Muslim can compel anybody to follow that religion. We are instructed, commanded to live in peace and respect people from other faiths. But these conversations don't happen. I never had these conversations. And the young men and women that I'm trying to protect and persuade not to travel this path don't have these conversations in their space. We have to create those spaces. We have to have those discussions for the sake of peace and stability. Let's have those conversations of peace. Let's find common ground. Let's find what will shape your future and the future of your children and the future of our world. Thank you very much.